Welcome to Ultimate Wrestling Trivia, the show on YouTube. The man down there is Mike Merc. The man in the middle, the two-time Hall of Famer, Angelo Stefano. And my name is Devon. We appreciate you guys tuning in each and every Tuesday on Ultimate Wrestling Trivia, the show on YouTube. Go ahead and smash that thumbs up, give us a like, a follow, comment. It goes a long way so we can continue to give you a bunch of great content right here at Ultimate Wrestling Trivia. Make sure you follow us on all social media platforms as well. Instagram, the X, TikTok, all over the place. Search Ultimate Wrestling Trivia. All right, with that being said, we got a lot to unpack here. A lot has happened recently, including AAA. A little bit outside of the WWE and AEW, they had a big event recently where Jinder Mahal arrived at AAA along with
TripleMania.
Yes, along with Satnam Singh, the 7'4" monster from AEW. They became the new tag team champions. Quite the combo right there. And also, Matt Riddle, bro, shows up and wins the Cruiserweight title for AAA. And that wasn't even it. Maybe the most talked about thing, JBL arrived at AAA accompanying the heavyweight champion Dolph Ziggler, but Dolph Ziggler loses the title to none other than Alberto El Patron, and JBL goes ahead and flips the script and joins Alberto El Patron. So that made a little bit of a noise. That was kind of awesome. And they brought La Parka back from the dead, which was amazing as well. So JBL, I kind of digging the wrestling god, the early 2000s moment of him getting a lot of heat in Mexico. You guys have any thoughts on AAA real quick before we jump into our next topic?
JBL looked a lot like Vince McMahon in the clips. So when you see the clips, you're thinking, wait a second, is that Vince McMahon?
Yes.
Like, you know, JBL's aged a little bit, and Americans get a lot of heat and get a lot of boos and reactions in Mexico. Marco Corleone returned,
yes,
as well. So he's many wrestling fans may remember him from his WCW early WWE run, but yeah, they definitely made some noise. Conan is the booker. He's the one that puts this together. There's a big feud, if you will, between AAA and CMLL for that Mexican audience. And Conan is definitely one to pull a lot of Americans out of his bag when needed and called upon, and they're definitely being featured in a prominent role.
Shout out to our boy Conan. We appreciate him a lot. And the word on the street is La Parka. He was the one that did the little dance, right, with the chair. Do you do that, Stefano, at all? Or?
No, I don't. The only question I have is this original La Parka, or is this La Parka numero dos or numero tres?
Good point.
I'm not sure. I really don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I would be interested if someone knew that. Throw it in the comment section.
And another thing with Mexico and the feud between the wrestling companies is the companies will own the trademark. You've seen this recently with Sin Cara, Psychosis. And so what happens is the company owns the name, but that wrestler's what's made it famous. So when they switch companies, that wrestler ends up having to change or rebrand themselves. But sometimes the company will then put another wrestler under the mask.
That is true.
You know, we saw that in the United States with the fake Diesel, fake Razor Ramon when Nash and Hall went to WCW in the mid-90s. And it didn't go over well. It does play a little bit better.
We saw that with Black Taurus in AEW. It's now the Beast Mortis. So, yeah, it goes both ways. And they want to keep the character alive. So definitely give us your comments, questions, concerns in the comments. Let us know. Well, as we switch gears a little bit, we have one of the all-time great managers in the world in his mind, Angelo Stefano.
Wait. I don't think in my mind. Of course in my mind, but it should be in everyone's mind.
All right.
Even if you never saw my stuff because it wasn't much outside of the Midwest, just take my word for it. Why would I lie or make up stories about it? That was awesome.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we know wrestling managers can make a difference in a performer's career. Absolutely, good, bad, or ugly. And you can be a disdainable heel, or you can actually add to the character and give them that boost. And we came up with a top 10 pro wrestling list. Let's start us off, Merc. Number 10. Who do you got for
You bet.
wrestling managers?
So just to give the fans and the audience a peek behind the curtain, so ourselves, along with Dashing Derek, we duked out this list, and there was some knockdown and drag out fights. There was compromises being made, unlike maybe current political climates. And we came across the aisle. We put together this top 10 list, but I'll get us started. Number 10, the Ultimate Wrestling Trivia Top 10 Greatest Managers of All Time. Number 10 is none other than the founder of the Legion of Doom, Mr. Paul Ellering. Okay. So, little background on Paul Ellering. Was a wrestler trained by Vern Gagne and Eddie Sharkey. Started in the Minnesota AWA territory, but he became famous for being Paul Ellering the manager, and that formed in Georgia. The original Legion of Doom was Hawk and Animal, the Road Warriors, but it was also King Kong Bundy, Jake the Snake Roberts. They kept that Legion of Doom name even after they left Georgia, went to the other NWA territories, back to the AWA, eventually WWF. The Legion of Doom name followed the Road Warriors because at that time, WWF was not going to use an existing name. Why would they do that? So, but no, Paul Ellering accomplished a lot with the Road Warriors. Many people consider them the greatest tag team of all time. And he even has some relevancy because he's active today, and his boys, the AOP, the Authors of Pain, they're former NXT Tag Team Champions. So,
and the guy made a newspaper famous as well.
He did. So.
And he made dog sleds famous too.
Oh, there
he
you
did.
go.
Yeah, Iditarod in Alaska. He competed in that in between some of his managing stints. So, former bodybuilder, all around good dude.
I think that's the most impressive part, is that Paul Ellering to this day in 2024 is still going strong, which is pretty amazing to see where he came from. All right, coming in at number 9, our very own Stefano. Who do you got here?
Well, we all came to an agreement that number 9, Paul Bearer / Percy Pringle. I maybe would have put him a little bit higher on mine, but we all kind of agreed on the 9 spot for him. I first remember seeing him in World Class Championship Wrestling as Percy Pringle, Percival Pringle III, managing the likes of Rick Rude, and actually the Undertaker's first match under a mask as Texas Red was managed by Percy Pringle. Kind of interesting how everything came full circle in the way of his managing career, because then he would be with Undertaker in the last part of his career. I would say before he became Paul Bearer, he was underrated. I really kind of got a kick out of him in World Class. I don't know. I don't think he meant to make me laugh, but I would just laugh sometimes when I would see him. His expressions, his facial expressions were so over the top, and he continued that as Paul Bearer, and the "oh yes" that he did. It's just every time I would hear that, it still gets me. So I think it's a little bit low for me, but definitely he deserves to be on the list.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, you can let us know if we have one too high, too low. Did we miss out on one? Coming in number 8, Merc. Who did we slap on the list here?
None other than the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, the gentleman who's currently 80 years young, will still occasionally manage on an independent show here or there. But yeah, he got his start in Memphis. Along with Jerry the King Lawler. He transitioned from the music world where he sang with the band The Gentrys. They captured WWF Tag Team Gold with the Hart Foundation, managed by Jimmy Hart. It was Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart. He had many wrestlers come through his stable. Danny Davis was one of the more famous ones, referee turned wrestler. But I think one of the underrated aspects of his career is when you saw Hulk Hogan make the jump from WWF to WCW, he was actually Hogan's manager when Hogan beat Ric Flair for his very first WCW world title. So this was a gentleman who was both a heel manager and a babyface manager, which is hard to do. But you can't think of Jimmy Hart without thinking about the megaphone. And he's timeless. He's classic.
I'm going to put you guys on the spot. Everybody has a Jimmy Hart story or voice impersonation. Does either one want to step up to the plate and do a Jimmy Hart?
Ha ha ha, baby! Hey, baby!
No?
No.
Okay.
That's not my favorite.
All right, coming in at number 7, I'll go ahead and take that one. Sensational Sherry. If you know, you know. She goes all the way back to the AWA. She's been up and down the block. She actually had a vital part in playing a role in the Heartbreak Kid, HBK. Of course, with her and Miss Elizabeth, I think Macho King, she did a tremendous job elevating his character during that moment. Sensational Sherry was one that wasn't afraid to get herself dirty, put her nose down into the ground and take that bump for the storyline and keep moving forward. And she could talk too, which was amazing. She managed a bunch of people during her WWF run, including Ric Flair, Honky Tonk Man, Jake Roberts, the $1 Million Man. And then probably the best part of her run really showed her manager credentials is when she jumped to WCW and she was the tag team manager of Harlem Heat. And now at this time, they weren't Hall of Famers. They were like Ebony and Ivory-ish a little bit. So they weren't like the Hall of Fame 5-time world champion Booker T and Stevie Ray. These guys were not like, they're still trying to find their ground and stuff. And I think with Sherry behind them, elevated them, and they ended up winning, like, I think a record-breaking 7 WCW Tag Team Championships. So, Scary Sherry Martel, most definitely the Hall of Famer. She comes in on the list at number 7. Moving to number 6, our very own Angelo Stefano. You have the rights for this one here.
I have, and this might be a little high on the list for some people's taste. J.J. Dillon. Now, J.J. maybe didn't have as long as a run as other managers, but and all his work basically is mostly in the Crockett territory. I remember first seeing him managing Buddy Landell and Tully Blanchard.
Super underrated.
Must have been around 84, 85. And then, of course, goes on to his big claim to fame with the Four Horsemen before abruptly leaving for an office role in the WWF. I believe it was 1988. When that happened. But he was so important to probably the greatest, everyone's talking about greatest factions, probably the greatest faction because it was one of the originals, the Four Horsemen. Can't have the Four Horsemen without J.J. Dillon. I think he should be at number 6 where he is and belongs. You might think it's too high. Maybe you don't even think he's a top 10 manager. Let us know.
We will recap what we have so far right after number 5. Coming in at number 5, a little spoiler. He's sitting right here at the desk. Merc, who is our top 10 managers of all time, number 5?
It is. Number 5 is none other than the guiding light himself, the Captain Lou Albano. He helped put rock and wrestling on the map as a babyface with Cyndi Lauper. Prior to that, he managed not 1, not 5, not 10, not 12, but 15 different tag teams to WWF Tag Team Gold, and he was just the original manager of champions, was the most successful manager probably in the history of wrestling up until that point of his career, and he did it as a heel, did it as a babyface. I missed out on the bulk of that managing career myself. My kids have watched him on DVD and streaming
as Mario,
as Mario on the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, which was something he did in the early '90s, right after WWF. But he is as accomplished as anybody on the list, and he's our number 5.
Our top 10 managers of all time. Let us know if you agree or disagree. A little recap here. Number 10, Paul Ellering. Paul Bearer comes in at number 9. 8, Jimmy Hart. Scary Sherry, number 7. J.J. Dillon slides in at number 6. Number 5, Captain Lou Albano. We're asking people about the greatest wrestling manager of all time. We knew this would bring a lot of debate. So recently, we went to a local pro wrestling show, HWE Hybrid Wrestling Entertainment, to ask some of the talent and the fans who they thought was the greatest pro wrestling manager of all time. We are asking folks, who's the greatest pro wrestling manager of all time?
I say Sherry, managing Macho Man Randy
Oh,
Savage.
Sherry, sensational Sherry, Queen Sherry. She was fantastic. Now, if you had to vote for another one, who else would you vote for?
The person that was managing the Road Warriors.
Oh, Paul Ellering.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I don't know his name, but I know they had a manager.
Yeah, he's still around doing his thing. So votes for Paul Ellering and Scary Sherry. We are asking folks, who is the greatest pro wrestling manager of all time?
I'm thinking Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Ooh.
I mean, you can't go wrong with Bobby the Brain Heenan and Andre the Giant, all the legends.
The Heenan family.
The Heenan family. It's hard to go wrong.
The Weasel gets a vote. We are here asking people who is the greatest pro wrestling manager of all time.
Jimmy the Mouth of the South.
Oh, you loved it when you had the megaphone, right?
Yes, I did.
All right, there you go. We are asking folks, who is the greatest pro wrestling manager of all time?
The Advocate, Paul Heyman.
That's a good one.
He managed like at Brock Lesnar's reign.
He's the one of one, right? Or
Looking back to WCW, the Dangerous Alliance.
Yep, that's a good one.
Yes.
All right, Paul Heyman gets the vote. All right, we are here with your boy Roy asking, who is the greatest pro wrestling manager of all time?
No, that's a difficult one. I like to think there's a lot of great managers all throughout wrestling history, but if I have to go with one that always gets me going, always captivates me, it's got to be Paul Heyman.
Paul Heyman. Now, that's number one, number two, that's number one, right?
That's number one.
All right, do we have a close second at all?
Bobby Heenan's got to be up there. And if I had to put out a dark horse, Paul Ellering.
All right,
That's
Paul
my
Ellering.
dark horse.
I like it. There you go. Best manager in pro wrestling history. We are here with the notorious Adam Grace asking, who is the best pro wrestling manager of all time?
I gotta go old school, Miss Elizabeth.
Miss Elizabeth, I like that answer. So did you always want her to go on the side of Hogan or Macho Man, or didn't you care?
Well, see, that all happened before I was even born.
Okay.
But now when I watch it, I was always on Team Macho Man, her and Macho Man.
Very nice. So if you had to get a second best wrestling manager of all time, who are you picking?
I will go with Paul Bearer because I'm a huge Undertaker mark.
There you go. You heard it from Adam Grace. Back to you guys. We are here with pro wrestling superstar Skylar Reed asking, who is pro wrestling's greatest manager of all time?
Greatest manager of all.
There's so many.
There are.
Well, TJ.
Okay.
All right, you got it?
Skandar Akbar.
Ooh, he's going old school. Skandar
Can I
Akbar.
say that?
Yeah. Why is that? Why do you think he's on your top of your
All
list?
the monsters.
Yeah,
Someone that had
control.
control. Yeah, that's the exact word.
Okay.
Control. I don't get control.
No, absolutely not. I've seen this man in the ring. Does not get control.
I would need someone like Paulie Dangerously.
Ooh, he come in at number 2, you think?
Maybe number 1.
Number one.
Let's flip
Paulie.
it.
All right, Paulie is the number 1. Skandar Akbar, number 2.
Not Paul Heyman.
Not Paul Heyman.
I can't.
All right, there you go. You heard it from Skylar, greatest pro wrestling managers. We are here with Mr. Shane Hills, pro wrestling superstar, asking the big question. Who is pro wrestling's greatest manager of all time?
Got to be the brain, Bobby Heenan.
The Weasel gets the vote again. If you had a second one to vote for, who would you pick?
Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart.
Oh, man, it always annoyed me with that megaphone.
Me too.
All
But
right.
They're good, man.
There you go. You heard it from Shane Hills, the greatest manager of all time. We are here with pro wrestling superstar Ethen Matthews asking the hard-hitting question. Who is pro wrestling's greatest manager of all time?
You know, for my money, I'm going to have to say the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart.
Oh, he gets another vote. The megaphone.
The megaphone, the airbrush jackets, the fact that I think that down in Florida he found the Fountain of Youth.
That's true. The man is like
He hasn't
100
aged.
years.
He hasn't aged.
It's unbelievable. I'm going to put you on the spot. Who's the second? Who would you pick for a second one just off the top of your head?
Let's go Heenan.
Bobby Heenan, the
Like,
Weasel.
I'd say realistically we're at 1A, 1B kind
There
of
you go.
situation, really.
Yep, you can't go wrong with either one. There you heard it from Ethen Matthews, the greatest pro wrestling manager of all time. We are here with pro wrestling superstar Brick 12 Gauge McCarthy asking the hard-hitting question, who is pro wrestling's greatest manager of all time?
Sonny. No, wait.
Sonny? Sonny.
No,
No,
wait.
no.
Captain. No, not Captain.
Not Captain.
Great though in the music videos. Real nice guy.
Yeah.
You know what? It's got to go with the man that filed his teeth down, the guy that Muhammad Ali loved the best, Classy Freddie Blassie.
Nice. You pencil net geeks out there, you heard it from Brick, the #1 manager of all time.
That brings us to the number 4 spot, which is Gary Hart, which is widely considered one of the greatest bookers and minds in pro wrestling history. Not only does he have an excellent book that's like $10,000, but he had one of the most legendary feuds that he put together in the Von Erichs and the Fabulous Freebirds. Gary Hart definitely has to be on your Mount Rushmore. I think that's why we have him at the number 4 spot. He's got to be talked about as one of the all-time greats, and his list of people that he's managed is a list of who is who, much like a lot of managers here, but the great Muda, Abdul the Butcher, the great Kabuki, Terry Funk, Gino Hernandez, Dusty, and Dick Murdoch is the one-man gang, Kevin Sullivan, the list goes on. Gary Hart just really knew how to get the most out of everybody and get it from the audience, whether you just wanted to boo or throw an apple at them or whatever, but storyline telling and in the office booking future events, the guy is above and beyond, I think, anybody else. Playboy Gary Hart would be my number 1, but we had to compromise and we have our list. He slides in at the number 4 spot of the Ultimate Wrestling Trivia Top 10 Managers. With that being said, it's almost time for the drum roll. Number 3, Mr. Stefano.
This, for me, does not belong because number 3 is James E. Cornette, and I think he should be higher. I would argue for number 1 for Cornette. 2 at the lowest for me for Cornette, but we all had to come to some sort of agreement.
That's true.
And you didn't want me to get physical, so
that's true.
being the professional that I am, here we sit at number 3. For me, the thing with Cornette, if you go back and you watch when he starts as a manager in Mid-South, and it was either late 82, early 83, and you see his first promos, his first mic work, you see the seeds of what he's going to become, but he's really raw, but he's you can almost see his brain working in his head when he's talking. He's figuring it out. He's coming along. It reminds me of watching a great comedian in the early stages of their career.
Nice.
When you can see the talent that they have, and you're like, this guy, once he gets it, look out, he's going to be something. And with Cornette, to me, that's what it was. By 84, he was amazing. He was a heat machine. I mean, you don't get your tires slashed for no reason from fans.
That's true.
By the time he gets to Crockett in late 85, early 86, he's right in his prime. And his promos every Saturday night were priceless. I would tune in. Well, that was one of the highlights for me, was just what's Cornette going to say. His promos are gold. And
almost like what a lot of people say about his podcast right now. They just kind of want to tune in just to see what he's got to say. But what would you say to the younger folks that thinks that he's like the old head and he just hates modern wrestling and stuff? Like, what would you say to somewhat convince them to say, go back and watch this? Or like, because I love the analogy of you saying he was like a comedian on the up and coming, and then next thing you know, the guy's starring and selling out MSG.
I'd say go back and watch Mid-South and watch him start out, and then watch his early Crockett NWA work and up until the WWE, his run there. And it's just it's constantly up. He never went up, down.
That's true.
He just went up. And I don't know anyone that's really done that to that degree.
Jim Cornette slides in at number 3. Well, the number 2 greatest manager on the Ultimate Wrestling Trivia list, Merc.
Number 2 on our list, he's not just a manager, he's also an advocate. That is just part of the evolution of Mr. Paul E. Dangerously. Number 2 on our list, Paul Heyman. There's never been a manager to sell more t-shirts than Paul Heyman.
Oh.
He is, if you shared your love of Paul Heyman by wearing that I'm a Paul Heyman guy, and the wrestlers that claim to be Paul Heyman guys are none other than a who's who of the wrestling business. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, CM Punk, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, and the list goes on and on. I got a chance to see him in some of my very first wrestling matches when he managed in the AWA as Paulie Dangerously. He brought his brick of a early cordless phone. Wasn't a cell phone back then, but it was a cordless
Zach
phone.
Morris-ish phone, maybe.
That was part of his shtick to ECW with the hat on backwards, the ponytail. This guy definitely evolved with the business, so much so that Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns campaigned to have him with them. So originally, Vince McMahon didn't want that. He wanted just Brock. Brock said, no, if you want me, Heyman's my mouthpiece. And you saw that. Like that's a Paul Heyman guy. And Paul Heyman made it to number 2 on our top 10 list.
And before we say the number 1 manager of all time, we did have some honorable mentions. Undoubtedly one of the most beloved wrestling figures of all time, the valet, Miss Elizabeth. Some of us wanted to put her on the list. We had Stacy Keibler on there with the Dudley Boys Test and Scott Steiner. We had Skandar Akbar on that list as well, which was a great crew back in the day. Plus Mr. Fuji, which I can't believe we left him out. One of the most devious figures of all time. Demolition, Powers of Pain, Yokozuna, George Steele.
Let's be clear here. I know the man has passed, but he was very devious and very, very evil, as he used to like to say. And if he's out there in the afterlife lurking around, this is the guy, Mr. Fuji,
No.
The list. I had you on.
Oh, no.
I had you on. But this guy he kicked you off, Mr.
The 2007 Hall of Famer, Mr. Fuji. Was there anybody we left off the list? Honorable mention? You can definitely drop it in the comments and let us know. Was there another honorable mention? Anybody that comes to your mind as we're recording this?
You know what?
Right
we were talking in the pre-recording meeting, and no one brought up Oliver Humperdinck. He deserves honorable
mention. Sir Oliver,
very important in the territories, and then managed Bam Bam Bigelow in WWF.
Colonel Robert Parker,
that's a good one too.
Another good one, crossed over from the territories to WCW. And there's a lot. You could call Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert a manager. And I think that all these, one of the common themes of the top 10 list, yes, Woman, another one, from ECW to Florida to WCW. You had a lot of these people were such brilliant minds that they made even bigger contributions behind the scenes. Cornette ran Smoky Mountain.
Right.
Paul Heyman ran ECW. Gary Hart was a booker. Jimmy Hart was a booker. Sir Oliver Humperdinck was a booker. Paul Bearer was a booker. So, yeah, there are a lot of contributions.
To recap our top 10 Ultimate Wrestling Trivia list, Paul Ellering, number 10. Paul Bearer, number 9. Number 8, Jimmy Hart. Scary Sherry Martel, number 7. Number 6, J.J. Dillon. Captain Lou is number 5. Number 4 is Gary Hart. Number 3, Jim Cornette. Paul E. Dangerously, Paul Heyman, you're number 2. And drum roll, please. With the number 1.
This is
our very own Angelo Stefano.
Obviously, everyone knows who it is. It's no surprise here.
Who's that?
Greatest manager of all time, none other than Angelo Stefano.
Wait.
I'd like to thank each and every one of you that I ever managed personally. Bastion, Booger, Cujo, Matt and Travis, so many others to name. I wouldn't be here I would be here if it wasn't for you.
I don't think that's who's on my list.
I don't have that on the list. I'm going to steal a little quote from Dashing Derek. Would you stop? It's not. Read the number 1.
Angelo Stefano, there. That's right in my writing. It's right in my writing.
That's not the number 1 manager.
Well, fine. Then who is it?
Bobby the Brain Heenan, the Weasel, the man, the myth, the legend.
Well, I guess that works too.
All right. Tell us a little bit about Bobby Heenan. What that some people might not know about. I mean, if people argue that JR and Jerry Lawler are the greatest commentary duo of all time, they obviously did not listen to the chemistry with Heenan and Monsoon, but we're talking about manager stuff. I mean, Andre the Giant, the Heenan family. I mean, you had a list of who's who, Paul Orndorff, King Kong Bundys of the world. I mean, Heenan, quick-witted, knew how to push those buttons. The guy was tremendous.
The best Bobby Heenan promo, in my opinion, and it's the best because it's absolutely 100% true. I believe he was berating Mr. Wonderful, and he said, "You stick with me, you go to the top. You don't stick with me, you become nothing. Or maybe those weren't the exact words, but that's pretty much what it was. Anyone you wanted to make important, anyone you wanted to step up to the next level to look as credible, you put Bobby Heenan with them. And Bobby Heenan immediately raised their game just by being seen with Heenan. And of course, probably the only way I could ever see Andre turning heel was the way that he was when he went with Heenan, and Hogan's like, what are you doing with him, man? No, this can't be happening.
Brother.
It was the only way you could really turn Andre heel at that time in 86, 87. And Bobby could just do everything. Probably by far the best bumping manager.
Yeah,
absolutely. I don't think there's any question of that.
Yeah.
And he knew when to do it and when to make it important. And he just, I loved WrestleMania 1 when Andre body slams Big John Studd and Andre's throwing the $15,000 out to the crowd, and Heenan runs in from behind his back, grabs it, runs out, and Gorilla Monsoon's like, look at that little weasel run with the money. It was great. Everything Heenan did was gold.
It was. It truly was. And I don't think there'll never be another one like him at all. Merc, do you have any memories of Bobby Heenan at all, whether it be WCW or old school WWF?
I did get to do, I believe it was 2 independent shows with Bobby Heenan, towards the end of his career's run. His book that was written with Steve Anderson from Pro Wrestling Illustrated, co-author, it's titled Chair Shots. It has a lot of great stories. He talks about growing up in the Bruisers territory in Indianapolis, moving on to the AWA where he wrestled, managed the Blackjacks. And, it's almost a shame because, everybody remembers the Heenan family in WWF, but, his neck was so broken then that he couldn't quite display that great bumping manager, which he was. There was nobody that could slip on a banana peel the way that Bobby could. And you don't have to take it from us, even though Ultimate Wrestling Trivia has him as their #1 manager, but Adam Pearce of WWE has said repeatedly he's the greatest performer of all time, current or past. And when people say, well, Adam, if you could have one match with anybody, or who's the best of all time, he always says Bobby the Brain.
Interesting. There you go. I feel like he's almost like a Kobe Bryant-esque, where he's had multiple Hall of Fame careers. Like you said, a lot of people might just remember the Gen X world, remember him from the Heenan family of the WWF. But prior to that, in the AWA, Hall of Fame career. And then you said, he got injured, had to slow it down, just become the manager. And then he went on to the WCW, announcing, multiple Hall of Fame careers throughout his life. All right, well, if you agree or disagree, let us know in the comments what you think of that top 10 list. Well, this has been a fun episode, guys. I really like it, even though it was brutal. It took us 2 hours to put the list together, but I think we did a good job.
Hey, when you're trying to sound like you know what you're talking about, it takes more than 5 minutes, especially working with you.
With that being said, make sure you check out our Pro Wrestling Tee Store, Ultimate Wrestling Trivia. Give us a follow on all social media platforms. For Mike Merc, Angelo Stefano in the middle, my name is Devon, and we will see you next Tuesday right here on YouTube with Ultimate Wrestling Trivia.